The WataMote anime ended in 2013. Most people assumed that the story ended with it. It didn't. The manga kept on going, and it kept going for over 10 more years. More than 200 chapters, and it's still running today. And honestly, what happens after the anime is better than most people realize. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're watching this from. This is a Pinoy and the Goodies. This is something a little different from what I put up before, and it's about a series I personally follow that I think more people should know about. A lot of anime-only fans have no idea that WataMote is still ongoing, and I'd like to remedy that, one stretch at a time. Tonight, we're starting right where the anime left off, and I'll be honest with you, this particular stretch is where I personally went from relating to Tomoko a little uncomfortably to actually genuinely liking her. So please sit back, relax, maybe grab a warm cup of tea, and let's see what happened after the anime. Now, just a bit of context before we dive in. For anyone who's only known the anime, the last episode pulls from around chapter 34. So you're gonna have to picture Tomoko exactly where you left her. Still very deep in denial, still convinced popularity is one good plan away, and still pretty isolated. Now chapter 35 is where the new stuff kind of begins, and it opens with a pretty perfect "this is so Tomoko" moment. Her mom asks her to mail her brother Tomoki's high school entrance exam application. It's a simple errand, and on the way, Tomoko unfortunately gets distracted. A cat, then a bookstore. Then she completely forgets to mail it. So the application itself, it never goes out. It's not really played as some huge betrayal, and I don't think it's meant to be. It's small, kind of a careless thing that happens when you're a little too in your own head. But the fallout actually says a lot about where Tomoko stands with the people around her. Her mom is obviously upset, blames herself for trusting her with it. Tomoki, her brother, doesn't even yell. He just quietly decides he'll go on to a different school instead and starts giving her the silent treatment. He won't even look at her, and honestly, don't blame him. Now Tomoko tries to apologize, at one point dressing up cute and being weirdly servile about it, which, if you know her at all, is such a Tomoko way to try to fix something emotional with a surface level gesture. Tomoki eventually tells her he's not actually mad, and he hasn't really decided which school he wanted anyway, and her mistake basically made the choice for him. But the second she's off the hook, she reverts right back to her usual self, getting irritated at him for being indecisive, like somehow she's the one who got wronged here. So it's no surprise he kicks her out of his room, and the chapter itself ends on this quietly sad little note. For a while after that, her own brother just doesn't talk to her at home. It's such a small, dumb mistake on the grand scheme of things, but I think it's the first time the manga really shows you that Tomoko's self-absorption has actual collateral damage on someone who doesn't get a choice about being around her. Now chapter 36 jumps forward to Tomoko's 16th birthday, and it's just a great little window into how her head actually works. She's walking to meet her friend Yu at the coffee shop, narrating to herself the whole way about how mature she's become. Reading adult novels instead of manga now, drinking black coffee. She even imagines herself riding a motorcycle, looking cool, and then immediately imagines crashing it and ending up in the ICU, all the same daydream. She muses about marriage, having kids, being a grown woman at 16, before the whole train of thought just collapses into her repeating, "I don't want to work," over and over. It's funny, but it's also pretty telling. Tomoko's whole idea of adulthood is entirely aesthetic. It's about looking and sounding mature, but not actually being mature. And then Yu shows up with a birthday present, which is perfume, which Tomoko decides is a suitably mature gift. They catch up and Yu asks her, a little nervously, what a certain word means, something a friend of hers apparently said. Tomoko, still riding her whole "I'm so mature now" high, plays it cool, explain it like she's completely unbothered and worldly. Yu blushes through the whole thing. Tomoko, picking up on something, starts gently grilling her. Does her friend's boyfriend do that with her? Has he done other things? And Yu, who's obviously been talking about herself this entire time under the thin cover of a friend, ends up leaning in and whispering something that visibly shocks and excites Tomoko. The chapter actually ends pretty sweetly. Tomoko hands Yu the adult novel she's been reading, decides it suits her better. She watches her friend walk off and quietly admits to herself that, yeah, she's still just a kid, but vows to slowly work her way up to actual adulthood. It's really such a different tone from how the anime usually handled Tomoko's friendships. There's real warmth in this one, not just cringe comedy. Now chapter 37 is graduation day, and on the surface Tomoko's pretty unaffected by it. She's lip-syncing through the school song, sitting there bored, telling herself it's not really hitting her. Her middle school graduation was more emotional, and she remembers Yu actually crying back then, right before some boy nervously asks her to tell her something in private. Afterwards, she remembers they just went home and played video games together like nothing happened. Now back in the present, she catches herself almost tearing up over that memory, even while watching a girl named Megumi give the farewell address, and wondering almost clinically if she'd feel something too if she would have had friends like that. But mostly she just feels apathetic about the whole thing and decides to head home. On her way out, she notices a third-year boy standing alone, looking nervous, and she can't help putting herself in his shoes. Will she be exactly this alone on her own graduation day 2 years from now? She actually pictures it, standing by herself while everyone else says their goodbyes. What happens next in this quiet, almost accidental little encounter? Another student interrupts to ask for a photo, moves on, and Tomoko's left standing there wondering why she hasn't just left yet. The boy asks if she's a second year. She corrects him, first year, and he asks if she's waiting for someone. She lies, says yes, and immediately regrets it because now she's stuck. She asks if he's waiting for someone too. He says no, it's just his last day, so he's sort of just there. As the crowd thins out, he takes a photo by himself. Tomoko, stammering, offers to take one of him instead, so it's an actual memory and not just a selfie. He agrees, then offers to take one of her, and then he tells her something quietly sad and human. At his own middle school graduation, he just went straight home. This time, he wanted to wait until everyone else had left, just to see what it felt like, and it turns out there's nothing particularly special about being the last one there. Except he says it gave him the chance to talk to her. Tomoko admits, a little sheepishly, that her friend never actually showed up, but she's glad she got to talk to him anyway. He tells her to make the most of her last 2 years and walks off. Tomoko's left standing there, a little melancholic about everything still ahead of her. I kinda think that this chapter is doing something quietly important. This is the first time that a total stranger, someone with zero history with Tomoko, treats her like a completely normal person worth talking to. And it visibly throws her, in a good way, more than she expects. Now chapter 38 brings us back down to earth a bit. It opens with Tomoko walking to school on top of a wall, and the narration just flatly says, it's already spring, but nothing has changed. After all that warmth from the graduation chapter, it's a pretty deliberate gut check. Don't get too hopeful yet. Spring break starts, and after a stray, dark little bit of background news about a teacher exposing himself to kids. Pure background noise, very much this is the world Tomoko lives in detail. She decides to brave the outdoors despite her allergies. She rigs up this absurd makeshift anti-pollen outfit, goggles, a mask, a hoodie, sweatpants gathered at the knees, then second guesses it enough to swap into a shirt so nobody mistakes her for a flasher. And for once, it actually works. No itchy eyes, no tearing up. She heads to the park to look at the cherry blossoms. It's a peaceful moment. Kids on the swings, mothers watching nearby. Tomoko just sitting on a bench, enjoying spring without her usual allergy misery. Then she dozes off, and without realizing it, her legs spread open while she's relaxed on the bench. The mothers obviously notice, and they actually call a policeman over. He approaches gently, clocks pretty quickly that she's actually a girl, and somewhere in between relief and gentle scolding, just tells her to take better care of herself and sends her on her way. She goes home and cries, partly pure embarrassment, partly the allergies finally catching up with her anyway. Now, it's a good beat to land on, honestly, and a reminder to everyone that even when Tomoko tries to do something completely normal and self-aware, the world itself still finds a way to humiliate her a little. It honestly keeps things grounded instead of tipping over into kind of sadness. And of course, cringe this early. Now, chapter 39 opens up with a flashback. Tomoko's actual first day of high school, a year before all of this starts. Everyone has to introduce themselves, and Tomoko, trying to make a real impact, holds up this big sheet of paper for her big, interesting introduction moment. And then just says she likes reading and sits back down. Nobody laughs, nobody even reacts. In her head, she's screaming about nobody noticed the joke, including the part where the paper she held up was completely blank. Later on, hiding in a bathroom stall, she overhears two girls mocking some unnamed girl who totally messed up her self-introduction. She tries to convince herself it can't be about her. At worst, hers just went unnoticed. But back in class, she's imagining everyone secretly judging her as a failure, even while telling herself it's probably all in her head. The flashback closes with her walking to school a year later, having spent that entire year completely unnoticed by anyone. She decides this year's introduction is her second chance. And then something genuinely nice happens. Hina, sitting next to her, cheerfully announces they're in the same class again. Tomoko stammers, asks if Hina even remembers her. Hina says of course, they were classmates, and even remembers Tomoko's blank paper introduction from last year, laughing about it, which actually delights her. For 1 second, she thinks she might have found a friend. But then Hina tells her, completely well-meaning, that she's told everyone about Tomoko, and they're all looking forward to her introduction this year. Tomoko panics, of course, under the pressure, and blurts out the first boring thing she can think of. I'm an F-cup. Dead silence, until her homeroom teacher dryly goes, that was an interesting introduction, and dismisses the class early to gym, while Tomoko just sits there, mortified. Now Hina apologizes afterwards, clearly feeling very responsible, but the damage is already done. Later in class, head buried in her arms, headphones on, Tomoko overhears two boys mocking someone else's failed moment, joking that it was a Kuroki level bad. She just sits there, shaking, hearing her own name used as the actual unit of measurement for failure. Now that's a brutal 1-2 punch if you think about it. A real hopeful connection with Hina, immediately followed by total public humiliation, capped off with the cruelest possible detail. Her name is now literally become the slang for screwing up among people who don't even really know her. Now that's worth letting that one land for a second rather than rushing past it. Now chapter 40 thankfully lightened things up, Tomoko going on the offensive in her own particular way. All week, she tries reading a popular manga during class, hoping someone will notice and come ask to borrow it. She actually plays the whole scenario out in her head, and then of course, nothing happens. Nobody approaches her at all. The following week, different bait, bringing sweets to her desk, hoping classmates get drawn over. And her homeroom teacher, Ogino, completely misreads the situation, assumes Tomoko's trying to isolate herself from everyone, and pulls her aside to gently lecture her about making friends. Tomoko, mortified, has to actually explain herself. No, she wasn't avoiding people, she was trying to lure them in with manga and snacks. It's kind of a small, almost gentle comedy, but there's something quietly sad underneath it too. Tomoko's whole idea of making friends is still entirely transactional, baiting people in with objects rather than just talking to someone. Now the chapter itself ends on a strangely sweet note though. At the park, Tomoko gives her leftover sweets to a cat and somehow ends up attracting two boys to her bench, where they all end up reading the manga together. Not exactly the connection she was going for, but the real one all the same, just with kids instead of classmates. And honestly, that's a nice little button to end on. Her scheme technically works, it's just not with the audience she intended. So that's Tomoko's first stretch back at school. A real mix of small humiliations and small wins, but the bigger story is just getting started. Next time, we'll watch her get genuinely creative about chasing connections, and we'll meet someone from her past who remembers a whole lot more about her than she remembers about them. If you like this content so far, please leave a like and subscribe, as that will help this small channel a little bit. We'll come back next time as we continue to try to catch up with Tomoko's misadventures in the WataMote manga. So until then, do take care and go out there to make the world a slightly better place. Good night.